One of the reasons you are here tonight is to learn from our very special guest, Rob Rokicki. So I'm going to kick it over to Rob.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for that warm welcome, Amanda. This is such a cool event. It's so exciting, and I'm honored to get to talk to all of you. I, this is just, we're going to talk kind of a deep dive into a little bit of a window into my process for a song that I worked on for a show of mine called The Lightning Thief. I've worn a lot of hats and been writing musicals since I was probably about 13. And I've been an actor for many, many years on tours and things like that, and regionally and in New York. And then I was an MD and an orchestrator. And I think working in all those different disciplines has really given me a good insight on the collaborative nature of storytelling and how to crack open a story and those kinds of things. So we're gonna we're gonna do a deep dive on this song that was adapted from a very popular novel and a TV show. If anybody has watched that as well, and so yeah, I think we'll just kind of dive in, and we'll have time at the end for questions. I know everybody's skill set is at a different place, so I may reference some stuff about music theory or stuff like that, and just take what you can, and I'm not going to get too technical. Uh, it's more about how my approach and maybe some stuff that might be helpful to you. Cool. Great. Thank you, Amanda. So can everybody hear me okay as well? Are we good? Yeah, thumbs up. Great. Awesome. So the first thing I always kind of ask myself, in a musical is why does this moment sing? As an actor, we're often asked, what is the moment before when you're in an audition? What launches you into song? We have to have a reason. We got to be thinking about kind of the context when that's really everything. For me, in an adaptation, Lightning Thief was adapted as a play by my book writer, my librettist Joe Trace, and so almost every scene was kind of mapped out, and a lot of times I would cannibalize those scenes. You know what I mean? Like take elements of the dialogue and then create a song out of it. Um, there's only a couple of exceptions to that, but I always had a really clear context of what was happening before my song, a moment that would need to be musicalized. So that's really key, and that goes into like what are the given circumstances, right? What is happening in the plot of the show? What is happening in the immediacy of the thing? Um, and the more you can get in terms of like specificity of like what time of day is it, what is the character smelling or wearing or whatever. It's like sometimes if it's an outside or an inside environment, that might even affect the kinds of underscoring or that you might create or the kinds of lyrics that you might write. So what are those given circumstances? What does the song need to achieve, and what's at stake? Because usually in a musical, a song needs to do one of two things or both of those things, which is to propel plot, or to reveal character. Um, and and so we got to be thinking about what is the function of this song within the greater context of the story, and that also goes with song placement in the show. um, it's a tricky thing of the ride of a show, and there's a lot of different ways of getting into a show. There's the I am song, I'm sure you've heard, or I want song, usually at the top of the show, where we get to meet our protagonist and what they're going through and those kinds of things. You typically want to kind of, to quote my writing school BMI, which was spend your ballad dollars wisely, which is if you're going to have ballads, you got to really earn those moments of stillness. And so, like a lot of times, I'll really try to look at making sure that there's a momentum, and if there's a lot of really fast kinetic energy, maybe then after a big, production number, opening number, we can take a step back and have a moment to breathe, give the audience a break, and then sometimes that will also help dictate kind of what kind of a song or what the tempo of the song is, and those kinds of things. And then a great kind of other thing I think about is where does the underscoring begin? I was in a scene study class that I was playing as an accompanist with, I think, John Simpkins, who now is over at Penn State, but this was back in his NYU days, and it was a fascinating insight in his scene study class of whose accompaniment do you have when you start the song, and who that's usually whose song it is. If you've got themes, if you've got a kind of running motif, that's a thing, right? And a perfect example of that is one of my favorite musicals is Little Shop of Horrors. There's this great moment in the text of Suddenly Seymour when you hear like the da 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 ba ba, and it says like Seymour steps forward, even though it's like been Audrey talking, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's going to be about Suddenly Seymour, and it's literally happening in the stage directions and in the underscoring, and that is so on purpose. Underscoring is not just random. It really should be purposeful to help guide us from that gear shifting from a scene or a spoken moment into song. And so yeah, those are all things that I think about why does this song need to sing. Otherwise, if it isn't really heightened, if it really isn't like the stakes aren't big, then sometimes it's like, then it doesn't seem important enough. And maybe this is a book scene, maybe this is exposition. So we got to earn those song moments. Because Lightning Thief was a project that started off Broadway as part of Free Summer Theater. It was a 1-hour TYA, Theater for Young Audiences show that, we just kind of crammed as much as we could in this adaptation. And it did pretty well off Broadway for a little limited run. And what I loved about it in particular, and what TheaterWorks USA does, is because it was a part of Free Summer Theater, it was a gateway musical. So a lot of folks, especially folks from underserved areas, this was their first musical that they ever saw. So I thought it was a really wonderful story, and I kind of fell in love with these folks and the characters. And well, one of the things that happened, that just because we focused on trying to do the best we could for adapting the story, is that the agents, Rick Riordan, who wrote the books, fought for us to get the rights to expand the show, which is something that TheaterWorks had never done. But it also helped because we got nominated for some awards. It's very rare that a children's show gets nominated against Hamilton for Lucy Lortel, but that's what happened. So it perked up producers' ears, and they said, why don't you expand the show? So we ripped the show apart, and instead of making it more towards younger an audience, we made it towards a general audience. So that's when I think most of the songs that people associate with the show know the show. So that, my book writer Joe Trace likes to say, we built the roller coaster in the first 1-hour version, and now we had to build the amusement park. And so one of the big things we were very adamant about doing when we kind of changed the show, and I mean, the show went under a lot of changes. About 30 songs were written and cut in between the 1-hour and the 2-act version that went back to the Lucille Lortel Theater off Broadway. And that's when we wanted to not just have more plot, more things, more adventure, but really give moments of weight for the characters. Let the show breathe a little bit more, raise the stakes. And that's when the songs like My Grand Plan and Good Kid and the song called Tree in the Hill, they all kind of giving more of the inner world of the characters. And I wanted them to have their own moments. And so that's where kind of Good Kid came from. There was a moment where Percy got kicked out of camp, and Joe was working, my book writer was working on another project at the time. He was working on he loves adapting YA stuff, so he was working on Lemony Snicket, those novels for Netflix. So he was busy doing that, and he's like, I know you have an idea for a song, you just go and write it, which is rare. Usually the two of us are like in the trenches talking about every set of circumstances. I was like, no, I know exactly what happens. It's the moment that Percy's been kicked out of camp. This is a kid that's tried to fit in. He's been kicked out of all these schools through no fault of his own, really. And he's at a total loss, and it's at his breaking point. And I said, that's a moment there. That sings. That is something big. And it's stuff that I think all of us struggle with when you think you try your hardest and it's never good enough. And what does it mean to be good? What does that even mean anymore, right? So the scene that came out of it, actually Annabeth's in this scene too, but we didn't list her because she didn't have a line of dialogue, but everybody's there when Percy has been claimed by his dad, who's this Greek god, and it's kind of a big deal in the world of this thing. It means that the camp is in danger. And so this is the scene I got. Luke, says, Annabeth's right. Your dad needs a hero to clear his name. Quest could be. Everybody wants a quest. That's part of this world. I'm not going to get too much into the world building of the Lightning Thief, but you should read the books. They're wonderful. But it's really about parents and kids and cycles, and if you can break those cycles or not, if you're able to take your own agency in the world. So Percy's dad has been kind of out of the picture, and so here he's really angry. Says, "What do you mean because he needs me? Where was he when I got kicked out of school, when he couldn't pay the rent, or when his mom has been tragically, we think, killed by a minotaur of all things and taken to the underworld." So Percy's like, forget it. I'm staying at this camp. But Chiron, who runs the camp, says that's not an option. And Percy's like, what? So this idea here is that the camp will be punished because of you. It doesn't matter if you haven't done anything here. Your existence alone is the problem. And so Percy's like, you're going to expel me again. And so we tried a lot here of like, where does the underscoring start here? What does that feel like? So originally it was, you're going to expel me again. And then I immediately had like driving this motif we're going to talk about in a second. And then it was Joe Trace who actually was like, I think his best friend would stick up to him for him in this moment. So Grover, who's his best friend, says that's not fair, and the teacher is like, once I wish there was another way, which is literally what he says earlier in the show. Joe is really great about tracking moments, similar beats that happen in your libretto, so that like you can start seeing kind of a rhythm and a pattern to things. So it made total sense that here's a song moment. So everybody leaves Percy alone on stage. And that's the moment of, what am I going to do? That seemed like the better moment to start the song rather than before that. But the moment where Percy's at his absolute lowest, where he's finally planned a place to fit in, this new home. The whole show is about these kind of kids from broken homes that have kind of issues with their folks, and they find this camp where they can train and work on their abilities. And Percy is struggling with ADHD and dyslexia and been kicked out of all these schools, and he's finally thought he has a place where friends and a place where he can feel safe, and that's ripped away from him in this one moment. So that's why I thought this is a moment that sings. And because of where I was at in my career, I was like, this makes total sense. I had just booked a Broadway show as an actor, and that had been taken away because the producers had pulled out. And I was like, I gotta channel all that angst and anger I'm feeling about never feeling good enough, no matter how hard you try, when you've worked on something for so long. And I can tap into that personal feeling and channel it right through this character. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is Percy's breaking point. He's being expelled. He's had all these things happen to him, all these wild, crazy things that have happened to him. Now he gets a chance to react. That was a big part of the one act version, is just Percy is thrown on all these things, and we never get a moment of like getting to be in his head. So this is really, it's revealing more character than pushing plot forward, but we really needed to set up a moment where we realize that Percy is strong enough to get through this and to save his mom. And that's what's going to happen right after this song. And it also reveals the main theme of the show, which is about self-reliance and resilience against kind of insurmountable odds, or, this idea that, our leaders, our mentors, our teachers, our parents sometimes don't always have our best interests at heart, and it's up to us to make the change we want to see in the world. And that's a big theme of the show. And so here it's very much about digging deep within yourself, which we'll get to. So there we go. Again, I talk a lot, Amanda. Keep me going. All right. What is the hook? Great. To me, I was a big dork in college. I was musical theater and English major. I love Victorian literature. That was my my specialty. So my thing was about writing theses. I loved writing papers. I loved having like a topic and then everything supporting that. And that's how I think about a hook. A song should be about one thing. I think when I was starting out writing songs, I would be about a billion ideas. And truly, if you can focus your song to be about one thing, you're going to really get a lot of bang for your buck. So everything in the song should support that idea, thinking about that hook as the thesis, the crux, the title of the song is typically the hook. Can you tell me what that song is about in one phrase, right? Part of your world, right? Like, right? What is it about? And what is the intervallic or rhythmic relationship to the lyrics? You know what I'm talking about? Intervallic distance between two notes. What is that like hook? You know, dead mom, dead mom. You know, it's like, what is it about those things that make us latch on to that melody? It's a lyric, it's a melody, and it's a rhythmic component all combined together that is the kind of crux of, if you will, of the song. And almost all great musicals or pop music for that matter has a good hook. It's the thing that makes you want to come back to it, right? It's a hook for a reason. You want to keep re-listening and going back to it. Um, and so that's kind of what I think about when I think about a hook. So for me, the hook here, I took a lot of this idea of Percy having a temper tantrum and stomping his feet. So there's a lot of like strong beats on 1 and 2. This like bump, 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 this like stomp stomp. And so that's where that comes from. I swear that I'm a good kid, a good kid. Also, he's impulsive. He has ADHD and dyslexia. So it's like having these big interval jumps in the, you know, to jump from a G to a G or a B flat to G. They're big intervallic jumps to show emotion, to show heightened, you know, energy. But the rhythm is that stomping. Right? Which you'll see a lot of in the verse. Also, what I love about this hook is it's resolving as it goes, and you'll see this in the chorus too. It's never quite resolved. It's always like a beat off. So you get this a lot of tension and release as well. What do I mean by that? Well, I can show you here on this. Let me see if I can get my little pencil out. Oh, can I share still? Does that work? Let me see, annotate. Ha ha ha. Let's see if this works. All right, so you see this G here. I'm in the key
Yeah,
of
that's working.
E flat, right? But it's against this A flat here in the bass. So I get this really great, you know, it's basically an A. It says A flat 2 chord, but I'm really thinking of it as almost like an A major 7. I've got to write this. A lot of tension here, right? It's almost a full octave apart between this G and this A flat in the bass. So I'm getting this, and it's almost resolving. A good kid. Now I'm sort of resolving it, but I have like these clustery things in the B sus-chord right here. I've got things clashing against it. So it's never quite resolving. And you see it in the chorus too, as I'm pushing the beats. It's always this kind of tension and release of like never quite achieving what he wants to do. And it's like this push and pull throughout the song. And so that's kind of where that came from, of the hook of Good Kid. It just was like a declarative bump bump. That's really what it was. It's something simple but effective to me. It was something that I could latch into. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Also, Rob, can you
Yep.
make sure you clear the...
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you.
let me clear it, or it'll be all
Thank you.
it'll be all over the place. Let me see. There we go.
Awesome.
Okay, so a big part about how I find, because I write music and lyrics, but I've written just music and I've also said just lyrics, but a big part of my way in through both of them is how does this character talk? What is the musical and lyrical vocabulary of your character? You know, what's the personality of your character? And a big one, and this is again another one that I struggle with when I first started writing, and I think a lot of writers struggle with, is when they're first starting out, is how did the character not sound like me? Because obviously it's going to sound like you at some point because it's coming from you. But if you've got, you know, 15 different characters and they all sound exactly like, you know, how the way Rob Rokicki talks, it's not going to be very exciting and it's not going to be very specific. So that's why I think about like colloquialisms, fancy word for slang or vernacular that the character uses. Or is there a rhythm to the character's dialogue? So for me, I was lucky because I had source material to pull from, right? I was able to have all these POV chapters from this character in this book that was part of several book series, and I could really understand what Rick, the author of the books, kind of the way this character talks. He's irreverent, he's funny, He uses humor as a defense mechanism. He's impulsive. He's explosive. I mentioned, he has ADHD and dyslexia. He's very loyal. He's incredibly kind. He's like, what are things that the character struggles with? What are things that the character uh, makes them charming, makes them likable? Also, like, in terms of the rhythm on the page, like, what is it? Is there a snark to the character? Is there an edge to the character? A lot of times I would take literal dialogue from the book and just and Joe and I would use that as ideas for lyrics to the song. So a lot of the stuff, when you've been living with a book, especially an adaptation, when you've been living with the characters in your head for as long as we were at this point, which had already been like 2 or 3 years at this point, um, you started already having a sense of, okay, this is how a character might react to this moment. That would feel different from me, but coming from a place of honesty in myself, that I felt like, yeah, I could tap into this, but through the eyes of this person's dialogue. And it was really helpful in later books, even though we had the rights to do The Lightning Thief. There are later books where there would be POV chapters with other characters, where I could do that with characters like Annabeth, who's another major character. And that was really helpful. If you do not have this in your script, I would say create it for yourself. Really go through the libretto and try to figure out what are the idiosyncrasies that this character has. What are their tics? Where are they from regionally? Do they have like an accent? Do they have a lilt? Do they speak slow or fast? Also, it's like there's always a like, when they're around a certain group of people, how do they talk? When they're around their parents, how do they talk? It's like you can kind of gauge all of those things with who's in the scene or who's not. In this case, Percy's by himself. So Percy can be as angry and as introspective as he wants. So that's kind of where I got when I think about how does my character talk. Really explore that if you can. Determining the tone. Okay, so this was a big thing that for us, that we knew when we were adapting this beloved book series, that we had to get the tone right, because the author did not feel like the movies represented it, and or the fans did, the original movies that were adapted from this property, and we were really on our best kind of to honor the source material, to be good stewards of this property, and understanding the tone was one of a lot of humor and some snark, but then like absolute heart, absolute stakes. You had to play in the believability of it all. And if you made a joke of it, it wouldn't work. And if you took it all too seriously, it wouldn't work. There was this balance to it. Again, these are, angsty young folks. So, determining the tone of the song. What is the character feeling in this moment? How is that reflected in the tone of the song? Musically, lyrically, do you want to play with modes? Do you want to do like a Phrygian mode? Do you want to have something major? Do you want to have something minor? Do you want, it's like all of those things. What styles am I using in the song, and how is that enhancing the tone? I'll get to this in a second when I talk about what I mean about styles. A lot of times I'll look at a song that I love and I'll be like, why is that working? Or listen to mix tape of songs that I think a character might have in their world, and then be like, okay, what would my take on a song like that be? You know, Again, it's like that old Sondheim, let it come from you and it will be new. Even if it's great artists borrow good, or good artists borrow, great artists steal. Like, take something that you love, try channeling it through your own take on it, and it truly will come out something totally new. So I love to play with adjectives. At the top of the song, I'm like, how is he feeling? It's simmering, explosive, he's furious, intense, sardonic, sorrowful. It's like an animal in a cage a bit, trapped. What at the end of the song, where do we want to get? That idea of like what we talked about at the beginning here is like, where do we want to end up? Because the song has to go on a journey. We can't be at the same place at the start. We have to be changed by the end of the song. So by the end of the song, it's defiant, self-assured, resolved. I think that's a biggie there, or at least a little bit more self-confidence in some capacity. So the structure, I used an emo pop song structure. I listened to a lot of My Chemical Romance when I was working on this musical. I listened to a lot of Paramore. I listened to a lot of like power pop, and punk, and pop rock in particular. I wrote a lot of Percy stuff on electric guitar. That to me seemed the right instrument. Versus Annabeth, who I wrote, that character is very analytical, so I used a Rhodes keyboard sound that like that sounds like a computer to me. So I was thinking about like the way the characters um, think and talk would be reflected musically and as well. So when I got to this, you know, the thought of using kind of that song structure of an emo pop song, pop rock song, um, it was like, what are those elements that feel right? Oh, it's got to be rhythmically propulsive. It's got to have a lot of dynamic changes in it. In terms of the vocals and a chorus that really wants me to like land into something. I think that's some of the things that I really love about some of my favorite pop rock songs is that there's a chorus that you just it's very cathartic that you can just lock into. Um, so anywho, um, so there we go. I use the structure of kind of this verse. There's like a little
We'll go back to
intro, and
that.
then it's like, yeah, it's a little intro here, and then I get like a verse, chorus. It's basically like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, coda. And I love codas. Codas are your friends. Um, you know, whether that's the great Harold Arlen or whether you're Joey Iconis who loves a great coda, it's a really cool thing to have at the end of the song. It's typically like a new section that's totally different that oftentimes is a repeated section that builds. So I love a sensible coda. All right, so let's just dive into the how I structured this wackadoo song. Here we go. So this song actually came out of another moment that was cut from the show where Percy was like about to dive off of the St. Louis Arch, and so I had this it didn't feel right on a piano to have this sound. I was like, it needs to be guitar, it needs to be heavily distorted. It needs to sound like, all I could think of is like bees in his head. I don't know how else to describe that, but just this feeling of dread in the pit of your stomach, and you're so angry. And I don't know if anybody's felt this way before. I have a feeling you all have when somebody says something to you or doesn't believe in you or hurts you, and you are feeling just like you can't find the words. So for this moment, you're just like pacing until you can articulate what you're feeling. And so that was what I wanted with that electric guitar at the very beginning, just this like sound. So I have this fast 4/4/4/4 key of G, just open fifths, nothing too major. I don't want to like tip my hand that this is hopeful or minor or whatever by the omitting the third. You do that in this, you know, right? I'm not playing any of that. I'm just these big open fifths, the root and the fifth, which honestly, that's a lot of power pop music is that. A lot of Green Day uses that. You're using power chords. That's really what open fifths are. And they're really primal. It's some of the oldest recorded Western music uses that. Gregorian chants uses that. Like open fifths are really spooky. I mean, Sondheim played around with a lot of like the Dies Irae theme and Sweeney Todd and these big open fifths. Like, love open fifths. They're great. They're your friends. And I have some shifting bass notes. So let's get into this. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. I'm going to speed this up. Great. So there you go. I still don't love that Rhodes keyboard isolated. It sounds a little too forward in the mix for me, but what are you going to do? I really want. All right. So then the verse is this pulse rhythm with a push beat. This is the thing that was kind of the first key to the song, was this 3/4 stomping, right? It's the bass is also playing open fifths. It's really muddy. We used a 5-string bass. You know, this is something that a lot of my favorite bands when I was growing up, you know, in the 90s, this is like a Soundgarden thing. You know, a lot of these rock bands would play open fifths in the bass. You get real muddy, primal sound to it. So we do that. Love that. Next. So that's the first verse, is mostly that. Cool. So you get the idea. The drums are accentuating it, but I'm also doing some stuff on the hi-hat that's really fun to keep it propulsive. But underneath it all, you're in 3/4, but you're also pushing the beat on top of that with this bump, 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 right? It's unsettled. We're not in a happy place in terms of resolving, right? It doesn't seem like it's in a solid 4/4. All right, so let's keep going. So here at the end of the second verse, when I'm building with those kind of drums and tom fills, and toms I really love because I feel again that sense of primalcy to it. Toms are the big, the rack drums on a drum kit. You know, you have your snare, and then you have your other big sounding drums. I love the big toms without playing a lot of snare. You get a lot of really interesting sounds with that. So anywho, end of the chorus acts like kind of a pre-chorus here. These last 3 bars, I don't just jump from I just don't jump from here right to the new key. I have to find a way into something new. And this was again kind of cracking the song open to where the kind of aha moment to me that made the song work. So the lyrics, pack your best Percy, this big interval shift to high sustained G. So you have this pack your best Percy. You're always to blame, this octave jump here from a G to a high G above it. Huge explosive. It doesn't get any bigger, in terms of an octave jump for a singer. I mean, it can if you want to go like a ninth or something, but it's a big jump. It's a big intervallic jump. And so I'm using this as kind of a pivot chord. I needed a way to get to a new place. I was feeling stuck with this stomping thing. How can I go to a place that feels a little bit more like hopeful or optimistic, or at least like searching for answers? So I used this as a kind of, the C minor is the kind of pivot chord. It's the minor 4 in this key, which is also, you're right, the minor 6 here in this key, basically. So I also using something called a common tone to help me with this key change. So I have this G, or the G that Percy's singing, right? They're in both keys, they're in the key of G, right? I'm in the key of G, but it's also in the key of E flat, right? That note is in both keys. And so I have this little run, I took over here with like a glockenspiel, which you'll also see over here, which I totally kind of stole that idea from Born to Run and Bruce Springsteen. The idea of like, if I could just get out of Dodge, if I could just like get in my car and drive, those like little chimey bells, these like, it represented freedom and hope and optimism to me to have these little bells chiming in there. So those were all elements that I was going for. So yeah, I use this, I'm in this propulsive bump, 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 and then this shifting, raising the bass up. There's the minor 4. So it's totally exciting, and to me, I thought jumping up a minor third is really exciting to go from, well, it's really a minor 6, right? So I thought that was a really exciting leap. It takes us to someplace totally new, and I thought that was kind of really fun, and this like it reveals a lot about the character now trying to search for answers. And so we still have a little bit of the temper tantrum of like bump, bump, a good kid, a good son, but now you also have these little chimes. I have these backup vocals, which are now representing the voices in his head, and they're all overlapping. Right? It's all this like tension and release until, right, you finally get a big open sounding triad, and everything has been kind of 2 chords or suspension chords or chords that have had shifting bass notes. You don't just get a solid like triad major chord. And so there it is, on the top of the chorus, which I thought was kind of an arrival moment, if you will. Does that make sense? So the song goes in that place, and then out of it I end up right back to the verse. I found a way back to the G. So yeah, we get back to the next verse 3, which I develop a little bit more. I added a second guitar. I was able to go back after we'd recorded the cast album, and I was like, I want to develop it more. I'm going to add some sneaky extra guitar in the second verse. And I encourage you in your second or third verses, like as your song develops, like try to play around with the accompaniment. What is changing now? What does the character learn from the previous two verses or whatever, where you can start peppering some different stuff that's happening melodically or rhythmically or sometimes with the accompaniment that develops it a little bit more. So we're not just feeling the same thing every single time. It's showing some character growth. Okay, let's go.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're gonna listen to this
I
section
keep my
quickly.
head down, I keep my chin up, but it ends up all the same. Without your back, Percy, you're always to blame. I never try to do anything. I never mean to hurt anyone. I try to be a good kid, a good son. But
Cool. And you see that right? The bass is always just one beat ahead. It's never quite still. It's always pushing. It's yearning. It's seeking for answers because that's what Percy is doing. So it's never just block chords that feel right on a beat because that's not what the character is going through. Great. So verse 3, we kind of branch out from Percy in the immediacy of being angry at camp, and then all of a sudden it branches out to like Percy's larger plight, kind of the existential problem that he's facing, that he doesn't really have a home really, and to go back to. He's lost everything, and it's kind of everybody that has let him down, that he has felt like he can't ever please. So that's why I add this second guitar to create even more kind of ramping up the tension. We can play that.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can hear it now. Very cool.
So you get that little counter melody or going rhythmic variation. Also, you can hear that I'm panning. I did like an effect where you get like this, the pedal is doing a delay. So you get bum, bum, bum. And when we put this in the theater, we had that kind of delay happen in every house we had. You get this sense of like water going forward, rushing forward. There's like, that a feeling of motion. And Percy's power is that, he's a son of Poseidon. There's a whole water motif in the show. So that was part of what I was kind of going for musically, is to kind of tapping into some of that. Go on. Cool. So here we get to the bridge. This is where like I broke entirely from the form, and it's just Percy ranting about everything. And I just it kind of breaks down for him. And then it's like, all the schools in 6 year, every battle, every day. No one ever tells me their partner asks me, Percy, come around and stay. All you get are bad grades and a bum rap and a bad rep and a good smack and no friends and no hope and no mom. She's taken away. It's just this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and it never gets, and no one will take, it's these didactic declarative statements and just piling on the list of grievances. So it was just like, it seemed like the right way to go lyrically and musically, to just build into a frenzy. So he just builds and builds and builds and builds. I also, in the second guitars, I have this big like guitar slide, which I really love. It's just, again, more angst. I just was really throwing the kitchen sink into the angst of it all in the moment. And so that's kind of where I get to, because we have to have this breaking point so that the song can then have a new place to go after this. He has to get it out of his system so that we can go somewhere new.
guess I'm good for nothing at all. The schools in 6 years, every battle, every day. No one ever tells me that they're proud. No one asks me, Percy, how'd you like to come around and stay? All you get are bad grades and a bum rap and a bad rep and a good smack and no friends and no hope and no bomb.
Cool. She's taken away. Gotta end that there. But also, if you could hear, I focused a lot on the toms. So this like boom, boom, offbeat thing happening there. That again, it was this like a kind of a traffic accident happening. It's just like everything colliding together was the idea there, rather than a steady just stream of things. I was really trying to think about what the character was going through. Cool. Sorry, we're almost done. You guys have been sticking with me. I hope it's going.
No, Rob, this is all
helpful.
awesome. This is
I
so
hope
awesome.
this is helpful. All right, cool. Cool. So here's the final chorus. So the lyrics shift to introspection. The music is quieter. We've had a lot of sonic assault at us, and now it's like, let's have a moment to like breathe, to ramp it up again at the end. So the lyrics are delivered freely and in falsetto as a moment of vulnerability. Also, Chris, sometimes our actor, would add sometimes some different changes depending on the night. It was just like, it was very free, which I just loved. I love that extra element of collaboration. So that's something I've been so grateful to have, is that that next layer of collaboration that you get when you get an amazing actor that gets to work on your work. It takes it to the next place. So then Percy realizes it's up to him, and I was just like, what's the simple enough way of getting that idea through? You know, I never saw anyone, I never heard anyone. Yeah, again, like the show is called The Lightning Thief. I was like, if I could mention again like that hook to the title in any way to just like remind us a little bit about the plot. And again, the playing off opposites with lyrics is fun. I'm a good kid who's had a bad run. All I need is one last chance to prove I'm good enough for someone. Also, you saw I had fun with being like shown good for nothing at all the schools in 6 years. I had really fun time getting out of that last chorus into the bridge, because again, it's like he doesn't even have the words. It's just the stream of consciousness. So it's like one sentence bleeds into the next one. I love when lyrics do that. I'm trying to think of some lyricists that I know that I do. I think the wonderful Adam Guan occasionally will do that, who I also love. All right, so we have the stage direction of like Percy rises, like, ooh, so he's down on the ground. It's like, this is his lowest point. And I was like, oh, now it's like, I need to prove I'm good enough for someone. 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 It's like almost like what is that, like a Meisner exercise or something? You take a word, a sentence, you say it enough times and it suddenly flips the meaning of it. And it suddenly goes from, I'm not good enough for someone, to say, no, I am. And you just watch me. Right. And we played around with the ending a lot of whether we wanted to end on a major chord, which didn't feel quite right because he hasn't won. It's not super triumphant, but ending on the minor chord felt angsty. So I think we ended on like he's singing we had like a major chord on the right hand and like a minor chord on the guitar. It was like every time trying to figure out how to get this button right for the song. It was tricky, but we ended up just kind of sticking to our guns and just saying it's just going to end on the minor, and it's still going to be defiant, but there's hope because we know with the lyric it's going to work. So yeah, it's Percy has this I'm good enough for someone soaring over everybody with that, again, those voices in his head, the people that have told him no, the people that have kicked him out of school, kind of echoing in his head, which was the very beginning of the song. So it's a nice tie-in to that, but Percy's going to struggle against that. You know, and that's kind of the whole song. That was where I got. And then immediately after the song is when the foil of the show, Luke, approaches him and is like, hey, I know where your mom is. He's in the underworld, and basically uses Percy's anger and found like sense of purpose and directs it and manipulates him to go into the underworld, which is you know what the song has set us up for. Again, it's like, yeah, the song is not doing a ton of plot, but what it's doing is really setting up later events in the show in a really great way and telling us a lot about where this character is. Cool? That's the song. Good kid. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, I thought this would be fun. I never do this because it's embarrassing to see your first draft, but I went back to like 2015 or something and found my really bad first draft written on like a napkin at my office at like 11 at night, verse of a bunch of lyrics. And so on the left here, you'll see these lyrics, and then I say probably 3 or 4 revisions. There are probably more like 5 or 6 revisions. I think about every single word a lot. So, but the 6 schools in 6 years had come from another song, and I really like this, and I'm like, this is the way in. And yeah, these lyrics don't act out, don't act rash. No kid says rash. No one says that. That's not something that a kid would say. So like, I'm like, that's not in Percy's vernacular. Don't act up, don't act out. And that's something that another character had said earlier. His mom had said, be strong. So I was like, oh, that'd be great if I can use some lines that characters had told him earlier and like throw that back at him. So like, Last town's in the rear view. We're not even gone when it's pack your bags, where you're moving on. It's too general. It's too general about all the places he's been. I want to make it specific. So I keep my head down, I keep my chin up. This is something Chiron, his mentor at campus, said, keep your chin up, you know, and somebody else said, keep your, and so I was like, great, I can use that. And pack your bags, Percy is a lot, you know, we have, yes, I had it here, but it's like, you're always to blame. That's a lot more, angry and charged than you're moving on, right? You're moving on is, again, it's passive. This is a lot more like active and angry. This is interesting. These little subtle differences. I try to be a good kid versus I try. I thought it was like, he's almost like hyperventilating. That's what, like, I try, I can't, I do, you know, it's like thinking about his brain working overtime. That's where that came from. These are terrible lyrics. I never try to pick a fight. I into acting tough. I mean, these are just dumb. But again, they needed to be placeholders. They needed to be something. I try to be a good kid, but I see where I was going. I'm just not good enough. So I clearly had like, oh, Rob's being sneaky and having like a rhyme scheme of where I want to end up, of what I want this chorus to feel. But it's not, it felt too much contrived. Like, I ain't into acting tough. No one would say that as much. But no one will ever take my side. All I ever do is take the fall. That to me, yeah, it's a little poetic license there, but I love the idea of like the fall guy, or like I take the fall, I take the blame for everything again, bringing it back to that idea. And then instead of I try every time, it's more emphatic. I swear, right? And I love that too. I love repetition. I swear I'm good for a good kid. Guess I'm good for nothing at all. Even that's way bigger stakes than I'm just not good enough. I'm good for nothing at all. I'm not good for a single thing. So again, it's raising the stakes, it's trying to talk more like the character, all that stuff lyrically. But I had a good sense of kind of the structure already from all this. All right, I'm going to delete all that because that was a mess. All right, next thing. All right, this was like, okay, if this was a pop song, I'd just say stepdad. I'm like, that's terrible. No one would call them stepdad. So I was like, fine, I'll just go with it. Part of what I was playing around with is the idea of like, could the song be lifted? Could the song just be like a pop song in its own right? And honestly, I was just like, who cares? It's in a musical. It's going to be from a musical. It's got to be connected to the plot. Also, Gabe sings better. Gabe's just, Also, this was really fun. This was a line from the novel. So I was like, oh, I like that. Calling back again to anything I can do to keep it as authentic to the way the character talks. And this is a literal line from the novel. Dad was never there. The only family that ever mattered. No, it's the only family that really mattered. Again, it's like, right? Well, again, this is a biggie. This that I got rid of. Just as a filler word, I used to love the word just until I was in a writing class that were like, try to really focus on economy and storytelling, and just as a filler word. If you can get rid of just and try to focus, sometimes it's the word that is necessary, right? Like the way that people talk, you're going to use the word just. But this worked better. Instead of, well, she just vanished in the air. This is, well, she vanished, right? It gives me more pause for the actor to breathe. It makes it a little bit more clear in terms of the thought, and I don't need this. It's just adding syllables. She vanished in the air doesn't make sense. She vanished into the air, and now I have extra time here to get into, which is helpful for me. Then I finally found a haven, and then I like this starting sentences with, with and, you know, or I, you know, I know that's not grammatically correct, but starting lyrics with and, it's like, this happens and this, which we're going to see later on in the song. So it's, again, starting that idea here. And instead of then I finally, which is passive, and now, which is active in the moment. Again, like thinking about tenses. What is past versus present? I finally find a haven, which I still am like, I don't know if you would say haven. That's probably not the word Percy was saying, but, you know, we're going poetic here. A place where I can stay, no, someplace safe where I can stay. And then I wanted the same idea of, you know, pack your bag, Percy, go away, now go away. Again, this now and now, using symmetry here, keeping it immediate. And here's where I started adding the chorus in his head, echoing it again, right, with some oohs and ahs. Good kid, I had a good son, I wanted to mix it up the second time. Instead of I tried hard to be a good kid, a good son. Yeah, this was literally the exact same chorus. I'm like, that's boring. Can we make it? What can we do to make it different? I never try to do anything. I never mean to hurt anyone. I swear that I'm a good kid. Yeah, Percy, that's a good one. Oh, that's fun, right? That's also a colloquialism that you could say that uses good in it. But no one will ever take my side. All I ever do is take the pause. I'm a good kid. I guess I'm good at for nothing at. And that's when I get to the, I throw in this all the schools in 6 years, right? Which is fun. This was the end of the song. Please, I promise, let me try. Please, I promise, let me say. Please, I promise, good kid. Let me. This was like Percy pleading to Chiron, or Percy pleading to the camp, or Percy, and I was just like, boo. This is like not doing it for me. It was just, there's more song here. There's more song. It's just, this was filler. So that's where like, no one ever tells me that they're proud. I think like that's a huge thing for young people, at least, you know, for in my case, it was like always trying to be a people pleaser, always trying to please your parents and your teachers, and it's like no matter how hard you try to make it good, do a good job or try to be an A student or whatever, you know, you never get that recognition. And so this was a big key moment here. I know, and also I get this internal rhyme. They're proud. No one asked me, Percy, how do you like to come around and stay? Which is fun for me. I love an internal rhyme as long as it doesn't feel too hokey. All you get are bad grades and a bum rap and a bad rep and a good smack and no friends and no help and no mom. And again, coming back to like bad and good, playing around with that, to what it's really all about at the end of the day is this kid doesn't have his mom. And it's the entire crux of the story is that he's got to get his mom out of the underworld and he's feeling totally alone. This is the only person that meant everything to him, right? So it's again coming back to the central plot of the entire book series, really, or the first book in particular. I swear I never stole anything. I never meant to hurt anyone. Now we have a little bit in the past tense because it's a little bit more, you know, thinking about what's happened. Again, I really went nuts on this good bad fix here. I have a good kid who's had a bad run, but why not, right? It works, and all I need is one last chance to prove I'm good enough for someone. And that to me is that sense of like, but there is some optimism here. There is some hope, and that gave me the idea of, what if he just repeats this? What if he just repeats this over and over again until he's trying to will it to making it true? And that suddenly was like, there's so much power in that. Of like, you know, taking this negative stuff that's happened to him and then changing it and making it something positive, or at least something that he can take action on. Doesn't care if no one else believes in it, he believes it. What's cool about this is that the end of the show, I decided to do a reprise of the song that Luke sings, who's the villain of the show, and he's kind of a tortured character. It's literally has the same kind of lyrics. So I just thought it'd be fun to play you that as well, now that you've heard that. And it's great because you have this great payoff when you have a good motif or a good theme or a good hook, and then you have another character reprise it or that character reprise it. Suddenly it can take on an entire another life. So like, if you've got a good reprise, enjoy those reprises if you're working on a musical. It's really helpful. Because the audience already has a frame of reference, so they can go right into it. I'm like, oh, crap, this is like what would happen if Luke didn't go, or Percy didn't go on his quest, and he didn't learn from his mistakes, and didn't find, you know, a way to forgive his dad. This is exactly what he would have turned into, which is Luke right here singing these lyrics. So we can play that.
I've been here since I was a kid. I did everything they ever asked. Yeah, I did. And for what? You know this world will never be ours as long as our parents rule over the stars. So I'll do anything. I don't care if I hurt anyone. It doesn't pay to be a good kid, a good kid, a good son. The gods were never on our side, so I think it's time we watch them fall. And here you see what I did. Soon there'll be no gods at all.
Yeah, the interesting thing was a lot of that already had music, and it was a monologue that Luke was delivering, and I was like, oh my god, this is a perfect opportunity to reprise Good Kid here. And when we did it, and the first time an audience saw it, they freaked out. Like I saw everyone in the audience lean forward in their seats and people like gasped, and I was like, oh, we're on to something. That was, again, we say like an actor is one of the part of the collaboration. The final component of knowing if a song is working is seeing it on its feet. You know, this is musical theater, and seeing it in a theater and seeing an audience react to it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is working. Now we're off to the races. So like it was a real key moment to the structure of the entire show, was figuring out Good Kid, because it really worked well as this foil character of Luke at the end.
Hey, why don't we take the next about 5 minutes and just think about all these wonderful, amazing things that we just learned from Rob, specifically related to tone, thinking about how your character talks, thinking about defining the start and end of your song with some adjectives. We're going to take the next 5 minutes. We'll listen to Good Kid in the background while we do it. And take a piece of paper if you have, and a writing utensil, or feel free to type some thoughts on your laptop or device, or if you're with your writing partner, feel free to just discuss some of these thoughts. But just start thinking about how you can be more specific with your character's language, more clearly defining, the feeling of the song and the tone, or thinking about, where does my song end and where does it begin? So, feel free to pick one of these things to focus on for the next few minutes. And then we'll all come back together and get to chat with Rob. And thank you, Rob, for all of your time. Let's all give Rob a Zoom round of applause.
Sorry, I talked so much. Y'all are so late on a school night.
Do not apologize, Rob. Thank you for all your wonderful pearls of wisdom. Rob, is there anything you would like to add or share before we close out?
I would just say, like, what I was just saying is that, like, don't censor yourself. I think a lot of what I was struggling with as a writer starting out was waiting for people to give me the check mark to approve of what I wrote, or writing for other people, so that I would get their approval. And the truth is, until I actually started writing things that I wanted to listen to and I wanted to see. Speaking of NAMPed, I submitted so many years, like 10 years of shows that I thought were so important, and thought, oh, this is what they want. And then I just submitted this show that was really personal to me and weird about monsters. That was this graphic novel concept album. And that's what got selected after 10 years of trying, because it was something wholly unique and my point of view coming through 100%. And so it's taught me a lesson about, oh, that's the way in. So your voice, your unique brand of you is what will serve you well. And that's what we want to see. We want to see your stories. And I just wish you all the best. Like, have fun. That's all. Just like, have fun. I can't wait to see what you all come up with. And I can't wait to see your shows, wherever they exist, on the Broadway or wherever they may be. I would love to hear them. So,
got a NAMPed number near you.
That's right.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you, Amanda. That was wonderful.
Of course. Thank you all. Have a great night. And remember, our next upcoming program is on Monday, Songshare. So look out. I'll probably send you an email about it to register, and we hope to see you there. Have a great night, everyone.